to the Board Game Community Show. I'm your host, Riley Stark. Join me as I get to know folks in this community. They could be designers or streamers, podcasters, YouTubers, publishers, whatever. Really anything with an "er" at the end of its title is welcome here on the Board Game Community Show. Welcome back to the Board Game Community Show. Today, I am joined by the, I guess, CEO. Is that your title?
Yeah, we'll go CEO. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Patrick, leader from Leader Games.
All right, maybe we should drop the Patrick thing.
That might get a little difficult.
So, yeah. So I'm the owner and CEO of Leader Games.
Yeah, good to have you. I'm excited to get to chat with you.
Thank you. I'm excited to chat with you.
I was looking for recent interviews, and it looks like you haven't done anything for like 2-3 years. No, you did something last year.
Yeah, I did. I did an interview with Kickstarter on their website. I popped a Benadryl, and then I did an interview, and I almost had to take one today, but I refrained. Yeah, so I was a little. I liked my answers and went back and reread them, but I was like, it's a little out there, so that's fine. So
yeah. That's cool. Hey, it's fun, right? Keep it interesting.
Yeah.
Keep your it was a written interview. I don't know if I saw that one.
It was a written interview. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I didn't read that one then. My bad. So
So actually, he just sent me the questions and then I wrote out answers to them. No, that's not right because I just said he interviewed me. Yeah, he interviewed me and then he wrote out the answers and then I was allowed to look at them. So that was fun.
I always wonder on those, like, sometimes it seemed like I got interviewed once and they just sent me the questions. I typed up the answers and they printed it as is. But I know that sometimes it's like an actual conversation. And I'm always like, well, why don't you record the conversation and release it? You know, like, wouldn't it be cool to be able to hear it?
Well, it's friendly to read, I guess. So
that's true. What have you been up to? What have you been working on lately? Let's get right into that right away.
Yeah. So
how's ours?
So we had like half, not half, but part of my job is managing the company, and we had 2 departures this summer. Not totally amicable. People were just moving on to new opportunities, and so a lot of my summer has just been figuring out how to restructure those 2 positions because they're really close to each other. So it gave us an opportunity to kind of rebuild the team how we wanted to instead of reacting to what was going on. Unfortunately, that was most of our production knowledge left at that moment. And so we've been kind of rebuilding from that and working that out. So it took a while to hire. And we have one person that just started with us, Ann Kinner, started last week, and they are kind of picking up the ropes and picking up the pieces and putting everything back together. So that that it sounds easy when you hire. Says no one that's actually experienced hiring, and it's just taken up a lot of time. I had to review a lot fewer candidates than usual. I think that's just a sign of the economy in Minnesota right now. But you still have to redo that. And I had to. My due diligence was to interview a couple of people and check out the landscape, what was going on, and so I took care of that. So that and I creatively, I've been working on so I'm kind of at a phase right now in the company where I can they kind of joke about no one's going to pay you for your ideas, but I'm kind of at the point where I can just generate ideas, and I will work on a prototype for a while, and kind of the theory is if that hooks into the company, like if people like what I'm working on, then we can move it over to development and people start working on what I'm working on. And that's had some downsides, and that is I've scrapped a lot of projects lately. So during COVID times, I worked on a few different games and shelved a few different games, and just decided maybe the market wasn't ready for them. Maybe it wasn't bearing the fruit I was hoping it was bearing. But I think it was a good time for me to kind of regroup as a designer. I worked on Vast, and I worked on the last two root expansions as a designer, and that was with a lot of help. And Vast I did a lot by myself, but I also didn't have to manage people during the same timeline. And with the root expansions, there was a lot of generation of content, and then other people would work on it. And so this, for me, has been kind of a moment to kind of regroup and maybe change my skills a little bit, sharpen my skills a little bit, learn my own craft a little bit, because I just haven't had time in the last couple of years to work on them. So I like, it's hard for my ego because I had to set down a lot of projects, but also it's been good for me because I'm much sharper than I was even 18 months ago as a designer. So, but what I'm actually working on is I'm working on a game that I started kind of before Vast came into my life. So when I met David Somerville, the original creator of Vast, he said, I made him an offer for Vast. I said, I can publish this for you if you want. And he initially refused, which was in no ill will there. He had the right reasons to refuse. And so I asked him, can you teach me how to make what you're doing at Vast? Can you teach me how to make an asymmetric game also? And so the game I started working at the time was turned into a large tree in my creative career, and some of that went into another design, what that resulted in, and some of it went into this idea that that I had, where I wanted an open world adventure game where the players would shape their victory conditions as the game went on, and kind of create the open world experience that they wanted to in the middle of the game. And so there was some asymmetric principles to that, kind of the way that arcs ended up being asymmetric, in that as the campaign progresses or as the game progresses, you end up with sharply different ways that you're earning points. But I don't want to make an arcs comparison. Like, arcs is very unique and has a lot of structure to it. But yeah, and so that's kind of what I ended up pursuing. I set that project down a couple of years ago because Vast came in my life, and I wanted to work on Vast. And but recently I picked it back up. So, and one of the weird byproducts of that process has been that, I mean, it is a byproduct because it's based on this earlier design that David and I are working on, was that at the time I had generated this world of these fantasy races that were going to be fighting each other or competing, and it was like Root. It was the factions were very asymmetric, but unlike Root, I made it more like Vast, where the groups had very sudden death victory conditions instead of being for points like Root is, and the movement of the pieces is more chess-like. And so, one of the pieces, for instance, was a giant, and it wasn't you would move into someone's space and battle them. You would just squish other players' pieces as you walk through their space. So, and that kind of thing. And he had to find his sheep. He had a flock of sheep on the map, and he had to bring them all back to the pasture. And so you can't squish them. You have to pick them up and carry them back, but other players are hunting the sheep. And so that was built up with fantasy races. And at the time, Kyle Farron said, I don't really want to draw another fantasy game right now. I just got completed Vast. We were talking about putting it in the schedule. Can I draw? I'm really good at anthropomorphic animals. Can I draw those? So we started mapping the factions onto anthropomorphic animals. And as I shelved the game, a couple months later, a year later, Cole was looking at those drawings and had already had his own ideas for how to make a setting with anthropomorphic animals. And so that was kind of the genesis of, he said, let's do this art style for Root, and then Root came out of that. So what's happening then is basically Path is now in the Root universe because that's its art. And and I'm not trying to claim any ownership of Root. That is Cole's design. Um, but like, so now like the question is, do we continue doing that? So is Path going to be a game about the Root universe, or are we just going to retheme it? And so that's what I've been working on is getting that open world game where the players can kind of build their own victory condition as they go, and that concept has softened quite a bit. But I'm still making an open world game, and I'm trying to make an open world game in which the players can kind of pursue their own, like it's open world. Instead of having a bunch of quests come to you at the beginning of the game, there is some of that, but there is much more like, I'm going to go over here and explore how to get points with these people, where I'm going to explore how to become famous with these people. And so you see the Root factions in play, and you develop relationships with them, kind of like how the Vagabond does in Root. And so that's what I've been working on is building this very open world game where the players hook into the plot the way that they want to, instead of having things thrown at them. And none of this, I didn't want to make a game, and all due respect to those games, I play plenty of those games, but I didn't want to make a game where you go to a space and draw a card to see what happens. And so like basically all this, my best comparison is, instead of drawing a card and saying you're fighting a dragon now, you draw a card that says there's a dragon over here. Do you want to go interact with it? And so that's kind of that's how you play the game is by finding hooks into the plot and then choosing to exploit them. So I've been working on that. And then I also joke about what I call the evening shift, where when I'm at home, I'll still design games, and I'll work on smaller games that might be testing ideas that I want to work on. Or just like, I'm just trying to learn from it, and maybe I'll take some of what comes out of that playtesting and put it into the main work I'm doing. And so I've been doing those games also. I don't think I'll talk about any of those though, because they're a little bit more personal right now. So, but you might see one in the next couple of years. So I've been working on those.
That's awesome. With those games, you're not talking specifics here, but did your family help you out play test?
Yeah. I play test, and then and then I go to, I have a couple like play testers at homes, not at home, but like friends that come over, and they'll play those with me, and then I'll play with other game designers in the community that I help play test also. And it's interesting because they also give me the space to explore. I think Leader Games Path is a reflection of this. Root, Arcs, Oath are a certain level of complexity and a certain level of interaction, a certain style of interaction. And my home group, the group I role play with on Saturdays, doesn't maybe necessarily like, ironically, the things that I publish. I mean, they do. They like them. They play them. But they're more into, since they're a role-playing group, they're more into like a cooperative story and not maybe that tight of a victory race. And so this gives me an opportunity to explore games that are a little bit lighter in that sense, that it's more about the narrative and less about players clubbing each other over the head. And we definitely have played Root. We've play tested Root. They helped me play test the new factions when I was working on them. But at the same time, if I brought them a cooperative game, they would be more into that. I mean, we as a group, when we're not role playing, we're up to like mission 48 of the original crew. So
nice.
We're about to finish the original crew, which is, I'm sure other people have done it. It's just, that's the kind of thing that they like that sort of cooperative play. So, and I might be working on something that is like in the same, like, I'm not trying to remake the crew, and I'm definitely not trying to make a cooperative trick-taking game, but that level of cooperation where it's about not being able to communicate common goals is kind of that space I'm exploring right now with one of my games, because I want to pursue that with them when we're done with the crew. So
yeah, I love that, because I mean, I think a lot of people will be playing a game and then feel like, oh, this is really interesting. If I were to make this game, I would do this twist on it, or transform into something completely different.
Yeah, and I wouldn't dare go after trick taking at this point, because the crew has got that locked down, and there's a lot of other good competitive trick takers that just came out. So I'm hearing a lot. Cat in the Sack, I think Cat in the Sack. What's the? I'm looking right at it. Come on.
I don't know what it is.
Cat in the Box. It's the trick taking game where the cards have no suits. And when you play the card, you announce what suit it is and block that space off on a board. And then the other players can attempt to play in the same suit, but they have to, so basically the deck will get more restrictive as the game goes on because you can't play a space that's been blocked. So like you might like, this is a 7 green, and someone else might come along and say this is a 9 green, but that's the last 9 green you're going to have for that hand, basically. So it's like they have suits, but they're not dealt to you. You have to kind of manipulate that board too. So I haven't played it yet, but I hear a lot of good things about it. So
yeah, I haven't even heard of that one, so I'll have to check it out. Trick taking doesn't always hit with me, but it's hit or miss. Like the crew I love, but I only get to like mission 10 or 12 with groups, and then I have to restart with a new group. So hopefully one day I actually get to 50.
Yeah, to 50. And then there's a second crew if you're done with the mission 50. So which we play that one in the office once in a while. So
oh, nice. Yeah. How often do you, as a crew, get to a crew? How often do you all get together and play other games?
Oh, personally, like in real life, or like at the company,
or even online or whatever.
Yeah. So I actually I've fought really hard to maintain, like a group on Saturdays to come, like a group that comes over and plays on Saturday. And my spouse is rejoining us when we play board games. She doesn't like role playing, but it was tough because we have 2 kids, and so there's always that like that steady drip of like, it would be easier if I wasn't doing this Saturday. Like, there's other things we could be doing. And there's been some, there has to be some give there, but I've worked really hard to maintain those friendships and to maintain that the people coming over every Saturday. So I get to play games fairly often. When I'm in a hot, like, especially during the end of COVID, we didn't play a lot of new games. And so I was kind of horrified when I got back and realized how behind I was in playing new games. But we did do a lot of role playing. We did play through Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion during the pandemic. I bought a copy, but then we played on TTS because we weren't getting together yet. So that was our campaign game that we could handle. We tried playing 5th edition on Roll20, and all respect to the people that built that software and set it up, but I just didn't feel like I was playing a role-playing game talking over Discord or whatever. Like, it had nothing to do with the product. It had everything to do with just not being able to see the people, not being able to respond to what they're doing and saying, or how they looked, or if they're bored or not. Like, it was just, I just got really frustrated role-playing online. So I gave it up. I did eventually find a way to do it that I liked, but it's still, it's nothing compared to the real thing. So, and then the studio we try and bring in. We've had some like spells, especially where I think we're about to head into one because finishing up Arcs development is going to get pretty serious. But we'll still meet once or twice a week and play other people's games and try and play in the studio. So we play the crew. We have played the crew in the studio. That was kind of like at the beginning of summer. That was kind of a big one. The guy that does our accounting, Ted Kaya, our director of finances, he and I we played like 2 weeks ago, we played Spirit Island every day.
Oh, yes. Well, I remember watching you like post pictures on Twitter. That's my favorite game. So
I really like that game. It's a weird. I'm not going to talk about Spirit Island. What I do and do not like about Spirit Island, but I do like it enough that I played it every day. So that's what I'll say. And I even like after playing it all week, I brought it home and I said to my wife, "Let's play a game." And so we played a game of Spirit Island together.
How did she feel about it?
Pretty rare for us just to play a game on a random Tuesday. She liked it. Yeah, she likes that one. She kind of bounced off it at first because of the complexity of the card interaction with each other, and I think that was more just an issue of finding a spirit that it was a little bit more clear cut how to use the powers in combination with each other to do the things. And she just kind of lucked into one. Like, she was playing one and she's like, this works for me. Like, I can, in her own way, she said, this works for me. I can play this.
Yeah.
So it was also like a really good, like, I was playing the spirit I was playing. I just like lucked into this amazing combo and was just kind of melting my half of the boards. It was also just a positive experience because we got really far ahead. So that was good for us, but
That's
yeah.
awesome.
So we play that in the studio, and of course, everybody here is responsible for playing everyone else's games. So I have a little bit of wiggle room on that because anybody designing gets a little bit of wiggle room on that because they have I should be working on path at least 30 hours a week right now. And so, I sometimes I just have to be like, well, I did 15 hours of, X operations stuff. So I got to get, I don't say it that literally. I just say, no, I'm not going to be able to help with ARCS testing. But so we all do ARCS testing. I can grab people to do path testing when I want to. And then Nick, who's been working on a couple side projects also, he can pull people for play testing. So everyone's expected to participate in it. Nobody gets out. But I mean, why would you want to? You get to come to work and play a game for your job. And of course, it can be frustrating because you have duties to get done, and here you are playing a game for 2 hours, and then discussing it for another hour. But that's how it goes sometimes. So
it's all part of the job.
It's all part of the job. That's right.
You're playing games and giving feedback. You're helping to shape the games and contribute as a team. I think that's the dream. I don't know.
Yeah. And it's really good for us because fortunately we have a group that we have consensus about what we like across the company. And there's definitely folks that work here that are more casual gamers than what we're putting out, but they still like our games. And so I think it's good that we can kind of gain consensus about what we're doing that way, that everybody can kind of shape the future of the design a little bit by giving comments or whatever. So it can be vexing too, because sometimes you're like, that's not what I'm making, but we'll try and figure out how to work with you. So, but that's compromise. So.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Feedback is always a fun, tricky thing when making games. So,
yep.
Well, how big is your team?
In
Minnesota, at least.
Yeah. So we're in Minnesota. We're mostly in Minnesota. We have 3 remote employees. I had to check. I'm a parent of a toddler and I also have a puppy, so my memory's going a little bit. So we were at 14 at the beginning of summer, and like I said, 2 folks left, so we're now back. We hired somebody, so we're back to 13, including myself. And about half that team works on the creative side. So Cole manages that team, and it has a couple graphic designers, developer, rules editor, and Kyle Farron works for us directly, and so an illustrator. And then the
Kyle's
other half,
I'm in Utah, so it's
Kyle's in Utah. Yep, Kyle's in Utah. And Josh usually works in out of Massachusetts, and he does all of our. And it's kind of a strength because he does a lot of. His specialty is doing all the usability testing for the games, in addition to doing the editing, and he more supervises editing at this point. And he works with some contractors to get the editing done correctly, but he does some of it. And he has his own unique set of play testers for that. And so it's kind of an advantage for us to have them remote like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then the other half of the team is just folks that do, finance, the production part. We have a few folks in customer service. And then, of course, we have to sell and market things at the end of the day. So we have those people too.
That's a lot to manage. I mean, how do you?
I abdicate all responsibility is my secret. No, I mean, that is the truth. Though, is I've been careful about when I hire. I make sure that everyone is capable of being autonomous for some period of time. And so I slowly over the years, I've moved from the stance that I was managing everybody to now basically Cole manages creative and then operations. We're kind of in transition with that, but Carol manages a lot of the people on the operations side. So now as part of our push was to hire someone to handle the executive direction of operations, and I just didn't connect with the right candidates, so I'm gonna put that job back up in a couple of months and see what I can figure out, see what I can find. If I decide to do it, I'm still thinking about that. So but basically, I have only 3 direct reports at this point. It's Carol, Cole, and then the director of finance is outside of that whole system too. So Yeah, and that's how I do it. And then I just depend on the teams to manage themselves. And I used to be a programmer, so I'm used to environments where you're kind of self-directed anyway, because there just isn't the management of IT folks is not as mature as as a concept, as a business concept, and so I think there just isn't a lot of management there, and by design too, because I think IT folks tend to be a little bit more self-directed in that sense, and so I think they would. I know I would if anyone was managing me very strictly, I would be. It just would not fit with the culture you need to do proper software development. So for me, I mean, I'm sure there are. I did work in one shop as a consultant that was very very managed, and it was very efficient. But it was a very different place to work. So, and I didn't mind working there. It was just different. All I used to. Yeah. So I did mind working there because the company got sold 4 months into my contract, and then turned into a new organization, we'll say. So yeah, I learned from that. I learned, and like when I worked at the college, my managers there were pretty hands off, and just as long as things were getting done, and then things were getting done, they'd come talk to you. And so I've been that's kind of how I learned to manage, and I think that's a good style for this particular industry. Every job that anyone has here, I've had at some point, except for maybe graphic design, and maybe I guess editing. I mean, I haven't done anything. I would never publish anything I wrote. We'll say it that way. But I've done the sales part. I've done I've managed the logistics. I've managed the production. I've game design, obviously, and so like for me to have that active knowledge to be able to manage everyone that closely would just be a disaster anyway. So
yeah,
it's better that everyone's autonomous.
No, yeah, absolutely. I like that style. I've heard that Leader Games is a great company to work for. So when you had the job postings, I was like, I do not qualify for this, but I am so tempted to apply.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm like, no, that's a waste of your time. So
I think and I don't want to cause a flood next time there's an application for it. But what I will say is, I think at some point we're going to move people out of customer service, because it's hard. It's a hard job, and they are good at doing other things. So they start doing other things by their own initiative, and you want to reward that. So eventually they'll move out of customer service and do other things. And so I think that is for someone that's not qualified, that is probably the best way to get into the company, is to wait till the customer service job, and then get in and apply yourself to other things that are going on in the studio. Too, and I don't want to tell people to do uncompensated work, but also I will pay you to do the other work. So that's yeah. I get people want to work their job descriptions, and that's fine. But also, there's just a lot of opportunity for growth if you explore it. So
yeah.
So hopefully I get 100 applicants next time there's a customer service position.
There we go. Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
You heard it here on the Board Game Community. So go after that job. You're guaranteed to progress in the company.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, guaranteed. So. And there's and it's the most openings because we follow there's some rule in business. You spend like 2% of your revenue on customer service or something like that. So that's where you get that's going to create that many positions. So
that is really interesting. I've never heard.
Yeah, I mean, no one quote me on that. I'm gonna I have to go look up that number, but there is a pretty precise you should be aiming for this number. So.
That is fascinating. I run my own business, and I don't know anything about business.
Well, you probably spend some money on customer service. It might just be your time. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. I just focus on customer relationships, so that's my main thing. But anyways, let's talk about you. What are your favorite games right now? This is the hardest question.
Oh my gosh, it is hard. So I've been playing a lot of Return to Dark Tower, which I think is a pretty cool game. I like I kind of leaned into this with one of my other designs too, and that is, if you're going to make a co-op game where things happen, to the group, there's no reason to reward success at mitigating a problem. And I think Return to Dark Tower hits that part out of the park. You beat a monster and you get all you do is mitigate that the monsters might do something down the road. You don't draw a treasure, you don't get a cookie, you don't get experience points. You just beat that monster. That's all you did. And like there are treasures that say like or skills or virtues, I think they're called, where it's like, oh yeah, you defeated a monster, so you get a treasure. But there isn't anything built into the game, and it's awesome. I just you're like commit all these resources that you've earned throughout the game to beating something, and then you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess that just means we won't get a bunch of skulls later, which is what you need to do to win. And so I like that part of it. And I mean, the game's all about gathering resources, so why would you reward? I mean, from a design perspective, it would be kind of sloppy to reward doing the other things in the game anyway, because there's already plenty of ways to get resources into the game. That's the point, is you deciding what and how many of each resource you're going to need during the game. So I like that one. We started. In my top 10 is this game from the 70s called Cosmic Encounter.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Maybe you've heard of it. Maybe it's early.
A little game.
It's just a little game. Maybe it's early 80s, but I'm pretty sure the Eon edition was late 70s. And I had the Mayfair edition. It was so I lived in a town an hour south of the Twin Cities when I was a kid, and we would, like once one of us turned 16, we would pool our money together, buy gas, drive up to the cities, and go to a game store because there's no game stores in our rural town. And that was, I mean, it wasn't even just about the shopping. It was just a fun day. Like your friends, you're in a car, you're 16, no one's watching you. And so we would go up and do that. We'd buy, and I'd always come back with a ton of role-playing stuff, and I'd spend all my money, and I'm sure it vexed my parents. But one of those trips, I bought the Mayfair edition of Cosmic Encounter, which is in a black box. It's got the Mayfair at the time, and this might still be true, just had a really good editing discipline, and so like the writing for the powers was rock solid. Like it was very well written, very well designed. Not that I like the FFG edition, and that was kind of my first exposure to modern board gaming. I had played Survive before then, which is kind of a German game. The game where you're trying to get the people off the island as it's sinking around you, and there's sharks and sea monsters and whales in the water interfering with you. So that was out in the 80s. I think Parker Brothers somehow stumbled into it and had published it in America, even though it had very different aesthetic than most American games, because one of my big is it Euro or not is if you can go backwards, so Monopoly, I can pay you $50, you can pay me $50, we're back to where we started. But in Survive, the island is sinking. The island will never go back to the way it was. That is never going to happen until you start a new game. And so that was probably my first exposure to a more Euro focused design. But Cosmic was my first hobby board game that I really got into, and I just loved it. It was 40 powers. You could play it over and over and over. And we probably, since we didn't have any other board games, my guess is we played it 300 times my junior and senior year of high school. Sometimes we just get together after school and play 2 or 3 games. So I have the FFG edition. I like it. It's good. It's well designed. I think they kind of sanded off some of the more brutal parts of the design. And they worked with the original designers, so it's not like they weren't involved. And then they just released this expansion called Cosmic Odyssey, which is like an expansion for all the expansions in the game. And it also ties them all together into a kind of a legacy style campaign system that you can reset. So you play 4 scenarios, you play 4 games, and then things about the previous games contribute resources to your next game. And then the final game, if you were first in any of the games, you get, based on which era you won, you get to bring, or age, not era, you get to bring cards into the final battle. And we've been playing one of those, and I've really been enjoying it. I've just been enjoying playing Cosmic again, though. So it's kind of like maybe that's just what I wanted was to play Cosmic again.
An
Um,
excuse, any excuse, right?
excuse to play games. I have been I've been really into a game called Warcry lately, which is a Games Workshop game, which is like Warhammer kind of boiled down to just a squad of guys fighting each other in the chaos wilderness.
Yeah.
And I, despite my like pacifism, I do kind of like heavy metal and that like genre of like just dudes fighting each other in a fantasy world. I obviously would not want to participate in anything like that, nor would I want anyone to participate in anything like that for real. But in a fantasy setting, it's fine. And so I really like Warcry. I used to play a lot of Warhammer in my early 20s, and I like what I like about Warcry is because every piece can move individually. It's it's like you have more pieces than when you're playing Warhammer, because in Warhammer, basically every unit has to move together. So you have 100 models on the table, but you only have 5 pieces on the table because they're going to have to move together as a group. But in Warcry, you can have 10 models or 15 models on the table, and they all can move and do things individually. And then what I also really like about it is that like if this is too long-winded explanation of Warcry, just go ahead and stop me.
No, keep going.
All right. So you roll dice for initiative every turn. There's 6 dice, and then any doubles or triples or quads, like so, like sets of dice that match. You can pick them up and use them to power your abilities based on which group you are, which characters you have. And what I like about that compared to Warhammer is if you're being 10 wizards, all those wizards can cast a spell, and that can really bog the game down. But with Warcry, it's like you can only activate 2 or 3 of your special abilities a turn. And so then there's a very tactical decision of like, well, if I use a double here, I cannot activate the double for another character over here. And so you got to really, and even if you get that one good model, that's like, oh, he's got this really good double, you may not still get to activate it every turn. You don't even roll a double. I mean, statistically you are, but maybe you roll 2 triples and you're like, well, I don't want to spend a triple on this double, So there's a lot of good decision making there, and I like it. And I also really like. I hate painting miniatures, but I love painting scenery, and it's just my eyesight. I would love painting miniatures. I have to be like this to. And of course, your viewers cannot, your listeners will not be able to see me putting the miniature directly in front of my eye.
Yeah,
but I
inside of your eye.
Inside of my eye, even with a ton of magnification and reading glasses, I just don't enjoy painting miniatures anymore. But I still really enjoy scenery, and that's given me a lot of ability to paint scenery. So I'm playing that.
I remember seeing early on you painting like trees and stuff, and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome!" But I never saw you paint miniatures, so now I know why.
And now, yeah. So I try. I have like 25 or so I've been working on, but mostly I just buy them on eBay painted or things like that. So that's also easy to do with Warcry because it's like I just need 10 models of a certain group, and I'm good there. But the trees I can dry brush until I love it, and I just like getting into that. So I did that. We've been playing the crew. I got back into Choose Your Own Adventure.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if that's a game. But the Van Ryder, those books they have with the comic book, they're the comic books. They're graphic novels, sorry, not comic books. And they have each panel is like go to this panel or go to this panel, based on what your decision is or which way you're going. And it's really cool. Like if it's a door, they'll just put the number on the door, and then you can walk through the. It's like page 121. Okay, is on that door. So if I go to 121, I know it's on the inside of that door now. And so I really got back into those, and then I recently tracked down from the 80s, early 90s. There's this series called Lone Wolf, which is like it's like a choose your own adventure style kind of adventure. But the guy who designed it had played D&D a lot, and he wanted to kind of create a solo way to play D&D. And so you actually you develop a character in it. And you choose from a list of powers that the Kai Lords, which is what the character is, can develop, and you have combat skills and endurance, and then you have, like if you get into battle, you have to fight out like kind of a RPG style battle, and they're very simple compared to like D&D, for instance, because they have to be. You're one character and it has to be resolvable very quickly. But I recently I started reading about them, man. They've been re-releasing them, and then I just happened to track down somebody who's selling the first 20 of the paperbacks from the 80s, so I purchased them all. And I've been reading those. so I'm really into that. I like that a lot. So, but yeah, I try and play a wide range of stuff, even though it seems like I'm kind of focused on adventure. And I'm like kind of looking around my office. We just moved offices, so my collection in my office is actually pretty spare because I kind of cut down the clutter in my office to kind of help me focus a little bit better. So I don't have a lot of games here right now. I have a lot of games at home, of course, but um, yeah, I played a lot of Kingdom Rush last winter, the kind of cooperative game based on the Kingdom Rush video game series. I like that. And
do you prefer co-op or versus?
just because of the group I have at home, I do prefer co-op now. And we played Unfathomable, the BSG reboot, and I like Dead of Winter. Those are co-op. So yeah, I suppose I do like co-op. So I don't design it though. It's kind of weird.
I know. I was just thinking that. I was like, not, it's not what you're designing, but that's okay.
I have worked on 2, but that was in the, that was during the practice period, so I haven't got back to them. So
yeah. Do you think you'll ever go back, or do you think you'll dabble back in it?
I just don't see. And we talked about this during the design chat last time, and somebody asked in the audience if I would do a co-op, if we do a co-op game. And I my problem with it is, like, if I went to a mystery writer and asked him to write sci-fi, which I guess has happened. I mean, like Philip K. Dick, didn't he start as a mystery writer and ended up, and even his sci-fi novels are a bit like beats from a mystery novel. But I wouldn't ask my design group to finish a co-op game with me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of my my development group. That's kind of my concern about. It's like, is it relevant to our skills? And people, some of the audience said, well, you're some of the best designers in the world, so you probably can pull it off. And I was like, yeah, but I just, like, I'm enjoying working on Path, so I'm going to keep working on Path for now. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, especially during the pandemic, a lot of co-op games kind of had a rise. And solo and everything.
Solo, yeah. And I do like solo quite a bit.
Yeah. Do you play very many solo games?
Yeah, I do. I played Kingdom Rush primarily solo. I played. I really like this series called Onorim.
Okay.
Yeah, the 1 or 2 player game by. I'm not going to try and pronounce his name. I'm sorry. I've even exchanged emails with him. So yeah, I play Onorim, and that's a series. So there's a bunch of other games where the designer had explored other mechanics inside the framework of making a 1 or 2 player game in that setting. And I have all those, and I Onorim is definitely in my top 10. And I do like it a lot. There's an app for it, and I tried the app, and my problem with it was that people are like, oh, it's great because you can play a game really fast. And I was like, well, that's not why I play Onorim. I play it as kind of a meditative activity. And so, like, making a meditative activity faster didn't really, those weren't really combining for me. So,
yeah.
Also, it keeps track of your stats, and I was just like, again, I can win a fair amount when I'm playing live, and that's fine. Maybe I'm cheating, maybe I'm not. You don't know, but like, but I just don't need a stat for a meditative game. So again, that just kind of flew in the face of why I played the game. So I actually uninstalled the app, and it's a great app. Well designed, well done, well implemented. It just wasn't for me. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So I do play a bit of solo games, and I do. I probably have a little bit of a backlog growing there, and and it just comes from. I get why people solo game. I respect that. Part of it for me is it comes out of as a child, I would play a lot of games by myself because I was the youngest child. My brothers were in school. So I would just be like, my mom didn't want to play games with me because she had other things to do. And so I would like sit down and play Life with 4 cars, and I'd just multi-hand Life or something like that. And And, and I tried multi-handing Clue one time, and I was like, "Oh, that's actually not going to work because I know who did it after one pass through the through the cards." Because I used to have a crazy memory like that, and but yeah, I'd play chess by myself. I'd make up little war games and play them by myself, and I'd play. I was big into crossbows and catapults as a kid, which I think got a kind of a resurgence in the early 2000s. So for me, sometimes solo gaming just means if the game doesn't have much hidden information, I sit down and play it two-handed by myself. Well,
Yeah.
But then as solo got better, like things like Owner M designed specifically to be solitaire, then that kind of hooked with me a little bit. I do have one design. I called it Lone, which is 4 letters. And I have play tested it a few times. That is solo, and I wouldn't mind going back and releasing that sometime. And it's just about a guy who's at a cabin in the woods, and a creature attacks his cabin, and then he's got to gather the supplies together to get off the mountain he's on, or to defeat the creature by the end of the week. And I started working on it in a way that you would go to places, and you would go to places and draw you fight a dragon cards. Obviously dragons weren't in the setting, but you'd go to a place and you find an ice shelf you have to climb onto to get some gear. And so I wanted to write the cards in a way that if the person wanted to, they could go into a supplemental book and read, the card would say read entry 17. And so then you go read 17 out of the book and get a little bit of story, but you didn't have to, that wasn't on the card. So you didn't have to see it every time you went through the deck. So
that's
once you'd read it, you'd be like, okay, I know what the story here is. I'm just going to do the skill resolution and move on with it. And then at the time before legacy games hadn't really caught on yet. And I think I've always espoused to Cole, and I think Cole agrees, and Arcs reflects this, that I don't really like games that destroy the components, but if there's a way to reset it, like Oath or like Arcs, that was a goal of ours. And so in Lone, I was going to say every time you defeat a scenario, there's a new scenario that comes along, and so that it's somehow a little bit more challenging. There's a new location, maybe there's ghosts on the paths, things like that, so that you can keep playing it until you have a certain win record, and then you move on to the next level. And so then you're able to tailor what is the ideal experience for me as a player, so that I have the challenge I want to. Because I think in co-op play and solo play, how often you're defeated is a very subjective thing. I don't mind being defeated 80% of the time by a co-op game, but I know some people are like, no, I would rather have it that we win 90% of the time. I don't want to know that I have a shot every time. So, and so that's kind of I kind of wanted to make a way so players could kind of calibrate their own experience during it. So, but I haven't got back to that. So, yeah. I like really solo quite a bit.
Nice.
Yeah.
I would be interested in that for sure.
I hear that a lot. I have to make a game that's interesting out of it, though. Is the problem? So yeah, it's interesting to me because I always would design it, and I had a prototype I liked, and I was like, is this? It's a different approach for me because in Root there's a certain amount of complexity to playing a role. In Vast there's a certain amount of complexity to playing a role. And what is a tolerable amount of complexity for a solo game? I think is a very different question that I haven't answered for myself yet. And part of it is that once I hit 40, and maybe even before then, but most of my solo games have been in my 40s, is that people talk about the downtime in a game is intolerable, but I actually really think downtime is important to let you reset a little bit, to think about what you're going to do next, to reflect on what's going on, and maybe to anticipate in horror as your opponent is doing things in the game. And when you're playing solo, there's a danger of, if you made the game as complex as Root, for instance, that you never have any downtime to kind of reset or relax your brain a little bit. And I find myself getting bored when I'm playing a game that complex alone. And I think that the boredom is literally just your brain saying, I cannot be up this long. You need to go do something else. Go stretch, go run around the block, go eat something. Just get me away from thinking about this thing. And that's not a conscious thing. It's just your brain has limitations. And I think a well-designed solo game stays under that threshold. So Owner M has a flow to it, and it's very simple decisions. It's all very naturalistic design. And by naturalistic, I mean you're not stopping to read text very often at all, if you know the rules, once you're going with Owner M. And so I think that is, I think that is important to maintaining that 1 or 2 player game state is to make sure the downtime and the complexity are in sync with each other. So that's just me.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I don't think I've ever really thought about that. Where like, you've got a lot of games. I've got Sleeping Gods right behind me.
Yeah.
Which is great. It has like the saves system, so you can just be like, all right, I'm good right here. We'll continue next time. So I can like call it at a certain point if I'm playing solo or.
Did you play solo? I'm sorry.
I play with my wife.
Oh, you did play. Yeah. So it's a low player count. And what do you think about the uptime?
I think it's pretty. I think it's good.
Okay.
When she's taking her turn and everything.
Right.
But usually I'm helping her. So we usually don't play very long, I guess is the thing.
Yeah, that's the other part too. Yeah.
I'll spend like an hour setting it up and then, we'll play for maybe an hour and then I'll clean it all up, which probably takes even longer because then I have to be even more careful putting it away than setting it up.
The fantasy for me is Sleeping Gods. I own it. I have not gotten to it yet. I read the rules. I thought, this is cool. I like what's going on here. And I did back the next one. So I'm interested because I think that's going to ship with like the kind of like the prequel, like the one on the river.
Yeah, which seems like a much shorter, easier.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to use that to introduce it to my spouse. And I'm not, no disrespect. She is as much of a gamer and for video games more than I am. But it's just, it's just the rigors of adult life. It's like she's kind of gotten out of the habit of playing games. But I think that's how we're gonna learn it, and then decide if we want to commit to the longer campaign. And we could be playing it right now because it's on TTS. And that was the intention of it, was that it would teach people how to play the game. So but the fantasy for me is, if we do play it, is that we just find a week where we're not going to meet that weekend, set it up on Sunday night, let it sit for 2 weeks while we're playing it, chipping away at it every night, and then finishing it and putting it away instead of having to set it up for an hour.
Yeah. I have cats. So this game does not work for me to I would love to be able to set it up over the weekend and come and play for 30, 40 minutes and then eat and do something else, come back at it. But the cats would absolutely destroy that.
They'd be laying in it, rolling around.
Yes.
Yeah, so
pieces would be gone, never to be seen again.
Yeah, our cat wouldn't do that. For some reason, I think we just disciplined him a lot initially, so he does not interfere with games. He will interfere with the game if we're playing it, because he wants attention. But it's just sitting there. He would leave it alone. So
good cat. Oh,
good cat. Yeah. Now the dog might put her head up on the table and pull something down, so we'll have to figure out if that's going to be an issue or not. Fortunately, our gaming tables, we have a family room in our basement, and we wouldn't let the dog, she's a puppy, so we wouldn't let her down there unescorted anyway. So
that makes sense.
She might poop on the carpet or whatever. So
yeah, as puppies do.
Yeah.
Well, at this point, let's go outside of board gaming. What do you like to do?
I game a lot. So for me, one of my when people ask me what my hobbies are, I say I try and find more extreme ways to do my hobby, so that, first of all, I acknowledge I'm chasing a dragon. I get that. I like trying, I want the 24 person game of Two Rooms and a Boom in my house because I want to play a game with 24 players because that's cool. And that's a new experience to me, and that makes me feel like I did when I was playing games when I was younger. So there is that, but also because now I have that experience of playing a 24 player game, and there's something that I can use in my design arsenal that I learned, from that game. And so I'm always trying to, I've played large games of Warhammer when I was in my 20s. I played D&D for a week straight a couple of years ago, and things like that. So I'm always trying to kind of push that envelope, and that's time consuming to be able to do that sort of thing. So I do play a lot of video games. I tend to stick to strategy games that you can lose. So I play Stellaris, which I haven't lost in a while, but there is a possibility of a lose state in Stellaris, and Endless Legend and Civilization. It is possible that you could get your country wiped out. Whereas I think a lot of action games, it just feels like you keep trying things over and over until you can pass them, which is, again, if that's what you want to do, no problem. It's just not what it's not what I enjoy about. But I still play action games. So I do a lot of that. I role play, as I discussed.
Do you have
I
a favorite role play system?
yeah, I do. So we've been playing a lot of 5e. That was funny because we kind of like in high school we like stopped playing D&D altogether, and we didn't play. That was like in the 90s, and I played a lot of White Wolf in the 90s, and then got into the early 2000s and was playing all these like cool. I played like Nobilis, and um, we got back to White Wolf. We played kind of what we played back then. Sorcerer. We played GURPS Transhuman. We played Eclipse Phase. So we had a lot of systems under our belt. But at some point, when the Pathfinder modules started coming out, I became interested in kind of long form campaign again, and so we switched back to D&D because it was just easier as adults to implement a pre-canned module for D&D. So, and that experiment's gone on a little bit too long. We played so. We'll leave D&D for a while, play something else, and then we'll come back to D&D. So I still play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. I still like dungeon crawling despite its colonial theme. And I think with 5th edition and with the like them talking about changing the rules again, I've always been like embracing the new rule set. Like that was also part of like we got into Pathfinder because before it was the Pathfinder system, it was just D&D modules. I wanted to play 3e because I hadn't played 3rd edition at all, and at some point recently, I was like, I think I've had enough embracing new systems. I have 5 editions of D&D. I actually like 13th Age, which is a spin-off of 4th edition anyway, better than all the other editions of D&D.
Nice.
So I have my rule set. I'm in my late 40s. I'm okay if I don't learn a new system at this point. Like, so I'm kind of, and of course, 6th edition is going to come out, and I will embrace it 3 years after it comes out because that's how I am. But and part of that resistance now is just like there's a lot of other good systems out there, and I should be playing them, and I need to get back to them. So, I really like Blades in the Dark for modern systems. Have you heard of Blades in the Dark?
Yeah, that's probably the next one I'll buy. So.
Yeah. So
it's not even expensive. It's
like $20 or $30. I like Blades and there's no supplements. So except for just new books in different settings, which is fantastic. So I really like Blades in the Dark, and I like all of its offshoots. There's a bunch of really cool stuff that's being done. The Rebel Crown, which is where the players are all like. One player is like a deposed noble, and you're trying to get back to being in control of your kingdom, and you get to or kingdom or duchy or whatever, and like you make your character, and you could be like, no, I want to get back on the throne because I'm a tyrant, or I want to get back on the throne because the current guy's a tyrant, or whatever you want to do with that, and then all the other players then are like people in your exiled court, so it's like here's the doctor, here's your warlord, here's last time I played it, I played like a bandit that was just working for. I was just like, I just want the new administration in so I can get a pardon. Basically, was my character, for that. So I like that. Copperhead County is like another offshoot of it, which is kind of a modern crime fantasy like GTA, where it's like GTA is not really about crime; it's about your fantasy of crime. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. That's not really how reality works. And so it's kind of Copperhead County is kind of based on that kind of that idyllic, I guess, view of crime. I guess Blades in the Dark is also kind of a view of crime that's not realistic.
Heist, right?
Yeah. You're planning a heist, but people are losing stuff and getting hurt, and it's not really something you'd want to do in real life. So, I like those. I like those a lot. And then my friend. One of my friends he collects a lot of systems, so he's really into all the Monty Cook stuff, like Numenera and those, and he wants to come and all the Fate system offshoots. So he wants to come and teach those to us. He's just been busy with his career, so it's hard for him to come and want to run something. So, and then we also played a very long campaign. A friend of mine just designed all the mechanics for, and we played it for like 4 years, and he had the whole story pre-planned. To the point that like every time the story branched, he knew what was on both branches and would not reuse that material. So if we chose not to do something, then it was gone it was paired out of the campaign. And I was like, that took so much willpower, because I'd have been like, no, I got this cool idea. I'm dragging it back over to where you are in the story. And that's tough.
Yeah.
And I've always been impressed by his fortitude. And we got to the end of the story, and the ending was based on the things that we'd done in the campaign. And it felt very like a video game in that sense, but like also like it was really cool. I really appreciate his effort there. So, so we do that. Otherwise, I got kids, so I play with my kids and try and exercise to stay healthy. I do like exercise. I just don't make the right time for it. So I'm really into yoga. My daughter and I do go to a class together. So
that's cool.
Yeah, that's fun. So
that is really fun.
I think I'm going to try and hire our teacher to come to the company once a week and lead a yoga lunch or something like that. So
that's fun.
Session. Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah,
so that's cool place to work. Leader Games.
I'm working at our customer service department. Just kidding.
Well, that is awesome. I know we're
a little bit over time. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I've got 2 more segments. If that's all right.
Yeah, it's totally fine. I'm being long-winded.
No, I love it. It's a good guest. People are going to love listening to this. So this next part is ridiculous theme. So we come up with a ridiculous theme for a board game.
I'm into this.
Yes. So it's, I didn't even warn you. Sometimes I warn people and sometimes I don't.
I'm ready.
You got one?
No, I'm ready. I'm ready for you.
Okay.
You're going to present me something, right?
Sure. Yeah. I do one each. So you come up with something. I come up with something.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm ready.
Let's see. Shoot, normally I think of something while we're talking, but I've been listening.
Okay, I'm going to start then. Okay. My wife yesterday was this is going to be a bit of a cop out. So I'm really not like real big on license things, and people like question comes up to me a lot. What would you do if you could license a game? And I'm like I just want the thing to exist the way it existed. And I've had some opportunities presented to me, and I've kind of push them a little bit, and I said, no, that's fine. And obviously we did work on Bunkers and Badasses, so we've done one license, but that was more to see what it was like. And I watched so she had a tough day yesterday with her toddler, and she's like, I just want to shut my brain off and watch a stupid movie. We watch a lot of, I should have listed that as a hobby. We watch a lot of films. So we watched the 2021 Mortal Kombat yesterday.
Oh, okay.
And that's a movie. That was the thing that happened. But I like the idea of it, and I think you'd want to frame it in a way that avoids Orientalism, which Mortal Kombat clearly steered into. But like, I do want the okay, you're a bunch of fighters who are going to participate in a tournament between 2 worlds as a role-playing game. So and then it's what's your outlandish backstory that you are the best fighter in the world is obviously how the character design for Mortal Kombat worked, because they needed very distinct look and feel to the characters on the screen. So their stories are just, I read some of them last night, and I was like, I forgot how bananas these backstories are, and it's amazing. And then what's your special, so your fighting style, make up some moves in that fighting style, and then what is your, do you have a hat with a razor blade on its rim? Do you throw fireballs? Can you hook somebody and pull them towards you? What's your ridiculous? You're going to come up with something unique when you design your characters, and then it could just be one session. Just like players, maybe they fight the evil team, they fight the other world invaders or whatever like that. So, very, very based on this other property, but that's okay. That's okay with me. But it's obviously, it'd be great if you had the Mortal Kombat license if you did that, but I think it would be fine. Just as like the Tournament of Heroes or something like that, and the players can fight each other or the game master characters, and then you just have these completely. I think someone else would have to play the enemy fighters, so the GM didn't have to do everything. But it'd be like, here's, in the tournament bracket, you're now fighting so and so. Here's that character for you. Now describe the fight you have, and not many dice rolls. Just let the description kind of carry you through the fight. So, and then maybe the characters that aren't present in the fight can interfere or cheer you on or throw you a chair or something like that you can hit the other characters with. So there's my outlandish plot for the day.
I love it. That's pretty darn funny. Well,
right,
that inspired mine.
Okay,
so
your turn.
Thinking of bad movies, making a bad movie that still makes money. So essentially the producers, right? Isn't that
yeah. I love it.
The plot of the producers. So like you have to put together some sort of movie that will still draw in a crowd, but not do well.
But not do too well that you have to make a sequel. I love it. So
you can do the worst without going bankrupt or something. I don't know. Maybe it's finding that line of like going negative or positive, and whoever gets the closest to being, neutral.
Okay, so now I'm going to riff on you. You ready?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So this is 2 for everybody. So Clerks 3. Do you know the premise of Clerks 3?
I don't know Clerks 3, no.
So it just came out, I think. And the premise of it is that the characters from Clerks 1, they're my age, they're middle-aged, and they are the character Randall, I think, is coming to terms with the fact that he worked at a convenience store his whole life and he wanted to do other things. And so they and that actor has directed a few movies. And so the Clerks 3 is about them directing a movie that is them filming the story from Clerks 1. So they're kind of retelling their own story inside of the movie. And I don't know if it's good. I haven't seen it. But what I want to do is make a game about creating Vast. So that I can relive the experience of creating Vast on a board game. so I'll riff on that a little bit. So
oh my gosh.
We got to make money. It's not the producers. You got to make money so you can launch the company that makes Root down the road. So
yeah. That's funny. That's really funny too. I like that one.
I'm gonna have to. I'll have to pencil that one out today. So,
hey, a productive chat here. Right?
That's a productive chat.
If one thing comes out of this, so I didn't bring this up, and it was on my list. I told you before we started, but I do the Bunkers and Badasses actual play. So, and I've looked through
an amazing coincidence.
Yeah. So Leader Games is obviously in there and everything. And I've tagged Leader Games in a few of their posts and stuff. And I think I always write thanks to Nerdvana and Leader Games. So, but what was the rule that you guys had?
So we mostly what we offered initially was that we would do the just the parts that Nerdvana weren't able to fill in, and so we kind of showed them the ropes. We mentored them on how to produce and the logistics part of it, and then they kind of took over by the time I got to fulfillment. So, but we helped them get into the factory and get the right price and get and choose the materials and how it's going to be produced. That was all
nice.
Our previous production manager Marshall did that, and then he wanted some developer experience, so he did a lot of he hired the designer Ian Moss, and then he did a lot of development, and the playtesting was done here. On Discord, but it was done with our staff, and then they worked closely together during that process to make sure that that was what they wanted, and they did some playtesting and development on their side, and then and then obviously the layout and the art was all from Nirvana. So yeah, we're pretty involved, and no regrets. I enjoyed the project. I enjoyed what came out of it. I think I feel like I should have played the game more as a product now that it's out than I have had time for. But because a long time ago I was working on my own just notes for how I would do Borderlands as either as an RPG or it's just kind of like a kind of a Descent style dungeon crawler if I was tasked with making Borderlands. And I wrote up my own script for on the other side of the planet, on the other side of Pandora. This is what's going on. These people are involved in this. And so I was starting to generate my own story for that. So I have material for it. I could definitely play the game. I just haven't had a chance to get around to playing it. So beyond the testing that I participated in, yeah, that's so yeah. So, but what was the original question? I'm so lost.
What the role was?
Oh, what the role is? Yeah. So hopefully that answers that. Yeah. So, like I said, we really enjoyed working on it with them. I enjoyed meeting them, working with their team. But it was mostly Marshall that did all the development on that. So now Marshall's working at Direwolf Games on Clank and other things. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Ian Moss is great. I've had him on both podcasts.
So Ian and then his friend, he used to work closely with John Gilmore. I hang out with John quite a bit online, and they're great.
They're doing a podcast together right now, Fun Balanced.
Yes.
Have you heard it?
I have not listened to it yet. Yeah. No.
We can pretend like you did. No.
Well, no, because I did used to listen to they had that live show too that I would tune into. It was always before our staff meetings, so I'd have to drop out halfway through it. But they had a call-in show for a while. That was kind of fun.
Oh yeah,
that was kind of a fun format. Yeah, John and I we joke a lot about. So we used to play this video game called Raft together. It's like a co-op survival game. It's like a kind of first-person style video game, and we joked about we would do a call-in show where we would be playing Raft, and you could just if you watched it on Twitch, that's what you saw. You saw my perspective in Raft, and then we'd be talking over it because we would get together, and once the game became easy enough for us to we're just going, we're just doing activity, or we're in a flow state in the game, we would talk about design. So that was the joke, is you could come on as a designer, and then we'd have Raft Chat where you could talk to us about your design project, or if you're having design issues, we would try and help you through them, while also fishing and making the boat go and landing on islands and gathering resources. And so then if you're on Raft Chat, you gotta do something. You gotta build something, or you gotta go fishing or whatever. So you can't just hang out with us on Raft Chat. So, but we've not gotten them off the ground, probably because we're busy. So,
well, that's fun though. That sounds really fun.
Yeah.
Well, I think that is it. Unless is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, but we should plug things though, right?
Yes, that's the second to last bit. There's a thing at the very, very end.
Okay.
But yeah. So yeah, go ahead and plug.
Yeah. So obviously we're hard at work on ARCs right now. Colin, most of the design team. I have some creative input, but mostly I playtest. And but I've really been enjoying the product that I've been enjoying ARCs that's coming out of that. You can still pre-order. I think it's the same offer as the Kickstarter. You can still pre-order through BackerKit. You can still get ARCs. ARCs is our 3 to 4 player, excuse me, 3 to 4 player kind of campaign style game. Not quite legacy because you can reset it. You play 2 to 4 scenarios, and then you come back to the base and start playing the base again. Or you can play ARCs just as a standalone game. There's kind of a more root style version of the game that doesn't have the campaign components to it. And it's kind of our 4X space empire, space building game, and has an element of the actions are. We said trick taking early on, but I don't think we're using trick taking anymore. But the way you play the cards decides what actions you can do on your turn. And that's been a very fascinating component. I find it very vexing myself. I want more freedom than the game offers me, but that's just the style of person I am. And but I people really enjoy it. Cole really enjoys it. Staff really enjoys it. I really enjoy it. I just find the way the actions, which is good. It's good. The actions you have in a game, you have to make decisions, and that's
yes.
I just find it fascinating.
There's times where you're like, I really
want to do this, not do what the rest of the group is doing right now. So, but that's the game, is you have to learn to adapt to what the group is doing. So we have ARCs is coming sometime in 2023. And then we are just about to ship, or we are in the process of shipping Ahoy to stores. And so Ahoy is by Greg Loring Albright, and it is our asymmetric kind of seafaring adventure game. I try and avoid piracy because there's actually not a ton of piracy going on in the game, despite what people want to project onto it. And so the players, it's an asymmetric game. One of the players is playing a kind of an Imperial Navy that's kind of trying to manage and police the area. Someone's playing some rebels in the area, and then the third and fourth player are playing smugglers who are smuggling goods around between the islands. And they shape the map because they create by the more trade they do, the more valuable certain islands in the map will become, and then the other two players will fight for control of those. So, and that's just about hit stores, and our pre-order is still open on our website for that. So.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Patrick, for chatting with me. I had a lot of fun getting to know you a bit. I'll have links in the episode description to ARC's pre-order page and anything else relevant like social media, etc. If you're interested in some other things that I am a part of, then you can check out this last Wednesday. I did a stream on the Tabletop Express, and it was a live play, and I anticipate that it will be really fun and that I will have definitely won. So go check that out. This Monday night, September 26th, I will be doing a live stream later in the evening. That's starting at 10 p.m. Mountain Time with the Board Game Captain and Board Game Gran. Those are always fun. It's called Board Game Insight. It's over on the Board Game Captain's YouTube channel. And we'll be talking about terrible games that we love. And Patrick and I briefly talked about the Borderlands RPG, Bunkers and Badasses. I've got that actual play podcast called Friend and Foe Adventure Co. You can go and check that out wherever you are listening to this podcast. It is explicit, though, so you have been warned. And that is it. Until next time, keep nerding out.
So, So I think for me, the all credit to Root because it's definitely our bestseller, and it's definitely going to carry us through the next couple of years. But when I was working on Vast alone, didn't have a job. I left my job at the college, and it was just months of like really hard work alone. Half the day I'd have to work on business stuff, half the day I'd have to work on design stuff, constantly trying to get things trying to get things back into playtesting. I didn't have a studio, so like playtesting was like, I'd have to get my friends over 2 or 3 nights a week to do some playtesting, and just a lot went into it. And so by the time we started the Kickstarter, it was a lot of stress. It was it was like a lot of money and time committed into that. And just in terms of like not working as much as I could have that year, I was consulting after I left my job. So unfortunately, I was able to bill at a rate that I could kind of float our family for a bit every time I consulted. And so like I didn't have any feedback beyond the Gen Con before the Kickstarter and with the public. And when I went to Gen Con the next year, I had Vaster Crystal Caverns in hand. That was, I believe, Gen Con 2016 was the year that we went. We arrived there with 500 copies of the game, and I'd been mentored into the industry by James Manthe, who passed away a couple of years ago, and he told me after the show, he was like, I think a show's really good if I sell 30 to 50 copies of each title I bring, and we sold a couple hundred the first 2 days of the show, and we're doing pretty good. And I didn't even realize at the moment. I was just like, oh, okay, you come to Gen Con, you sell games, great. And then we had randomly ran into Tom Bassel the Wednesday night for the show, and we taught him how to play Vast. And because he was trying to figure it out at the show, and I was like, "You're not going to be able to read an 18-page rule book and figure this game because it's asymmetric." I didn't say that to him, but I was like, "This is going to be a disaster," because I know other people have tried this; it's not going to work for him. So I offered to teach him, and he's like, "Normally, I don't let people teach me how to play games, especially at a show, but and I get that it's probably part of his review process is he wants to read the rules and determine how good the rules are at making the game work, or at learning the game. And so I sat down and I taught his associates and his family how to play Vast, and they played it. And I was like, okay, I think you're good. I'll take off. And I didn't have any feedback on that experience, and except for them being grumpy because they had flown that day, and it was a long day for them. No, again, totally fine. And so then David Somerville was at that show with us. He went to watch Tom Vassel's show on Saturday morning because I do a live episode at the show. I don't know if they do that anymore, but they do a live episode at the show every year. And somebody, top of the show, the MC said, so 4 of you on stage, what is your favorite thing about Gen Con so far this year? Like, what's the thing that you found that you like? And Tom just flat out said, I just tried this game called Vast Crystal Caverns, and it is something else, and everyone needs to try it. And I got a text from David saying, batten the hatches. And as soon as the show was over, we sold out. There was 30, 50 people at our booth, and we just ground through the other 100 or so in 20, 30 minutes. And it was amazing. And I'm like tearing up thinking about it. And then we, all I could do, like, people were coming up and demanding it, and I still had 500 left in the warehouse. I put them up for sale on our website because we had like 50 on our website for sale, and those had sold out. And I put their other 500 up on the website, and they were sold by Wednesday morning after the show. They're all gone. So I sold 1,000 of a game, which my previously 2 published games had sold. I think Trick or Treat just finally sold 1,000 copies. So in 6 days, I sold 1,000 copies of a game, and I was just like blown away. And I knew things after all that hard work, after everything we'd done, the game was getting good reviews, positive reviews, and we were getting, and then I just sold 1,000 copies in a period of a week, and I knew things were going to be fine after that. So that was it for me.